Hey guys, welcome back to what is a really lovely sunny day. I don't know if it's a bit breezy, it might pick up on the audio, I hope it doesn't to be honest, but it's a lovely day. I've actually found some pine cones in the pine tree that is above me. That's not really the topic for today's video though. I'm going to be speaking about something which is very much a pressing issue in today's world, and that is how lost our young people seem to be. I am a young man, I'm 21 years old, turning 22 this year, but I'm going to be speaking about this through the perspective of young men, simply because that is the remit that I understand. No other reason than that, right? I am a young man. How can I speak about the experience of an old woman or an old man? I've never lived that, so I can't speak about it. But one thing that I'm seeing is our young men in society today are really so very lost. And it's becoming a very worrying thing, and a very upsetting thing. I think the reason for this, well, I think it's actually a multifaceted set of reasons. We've got to look at the world that we're in right now, and we've got to look at the expectations that people have. We're seeing so many of our young people, young men, lost, directionless, aimless, not knowing where to go with their lives. So many of them choosing not to go anywhere with their lives. They're not making any improvements, they're not making any steps forwards, and they're not even really living what you could call a standard life. Because that's the thing. There's people who live a standard life, but as much as people can say bad things about, 9 to 5 workers or the average person, it does actually take quite a bit of effort to get up and show up every day for work. It does take a bit of effort to put effort in to formulate even a normal life. We're now seeing, though, I'm not going to say a whole generation, but more and more people following this path of low ambition, no ambition, following this path of really going nowhere. And it's quite tragic to see. But why could this be? And what is leading to all of this? Because every single time that I make a video on this, the comments that I see specifically from young men are particularly worrying. They don't even understand the situation that they're in more broadly. They don't understand the impacts of what they consume online, and they don't understand how easy it is to actually have a relatively good life. As a 21-year-old myself, turning 22 in actually less than a month, I am aware that I don't have everything. Right? I'm not going to lie to you guys. I don't have a nice house. My car is 30 years old. I love it, but I don't have that much money. I have a couple of tens of thousands, and really it's that simple, right? I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to improve. But what I'm seeing more and more is young men being completely hopeless, saying that that's not what's going to make them happy. They're never going to be happy. It's because they have poor dating options, so many different things. And I feel like it all boils down to one thing. Excuses. But excuses not because they are trying to make them, but because of the way that society has been constructed over the last 20 years. You see, the thing is, I don't really think that entirely, in fact, really even at all, the young men in question are to blame. You've got to look at the world that we grew up in. If you grew up in my time, or even worse, even later, and I say worse for one reason, when I was growing up, the latest technology that we had was like iPhone 4, right? That was my first iPhone 4. We didn't have TikTok. We didn't have any of this sort of hyper, mindset content. We didn't have Andrew Tate. We didn't have any of these influencers. And to a degree, you could make an argument that some of the influence that some of these influencers have had could be good. But what it has done is created a new standard of expectations for what people should have and at what age they should have it. One thing that is true, and I only really took a minute to focus on this a couple of months ago, was before the days of the internet, your chances of being a self-made millionaire at age 25, unless you had a degree in an amazing field, exceptional smarts, or family loans, was basically zero, right? You could not become a self-made millionaire, not really. Look at the world that we're in today. We've got dropshippers, we have got people who create certain sorts of content, which I'm sure you guys can imagine, YouTube streamers, Twitch streamers, TikTokers, all becoming millionaires, all creating this image. At the same time, because of the fact, or perhaps, which one came first, because of the fact that they are so popular, they become rich, and because they are so rich, they become popular. This becomes the new style of expectation. And then young men look at influencers. You could, for example, reference people like Andrew Tate, all of the money that he has and the message that he portrays, and expect that they would have this. But the funny thing is, right, even Andrew Tate says the best thing for a young man is to be broke. That's just one example of one of these influencers, right? He's even said this. It makes sense to be broke as a young man, experience a lot of stuff, then try and make it a bit later in life. That's not saying that you're not trying to make it early, but saying that there is undeniably going to be a period where you're building wealth, you're building influence, you're building, right? That is a reality of being aged under 25. Another thing is we interact with our phones far more than we interact with each other these days, right? Most people do not speak to people for 5, 6, 7 hours a day. Not continuously. But they can easily be on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, or any other site for that long. So by nature of this, the content that they consume is going to have more of an influence on their life or their expectations than the real world. And here's the thing about cope, right? I said this before, excuses and cope. I'm not blaming the people, but in the market that we're in today, with the internet, and with the way that it is turning, it's very easy to find a bias, or a creator, or a content niche, which will completely validate your worldview. So for example, let me give you the example of, let's say, I can't be rich because I grew up poor, right? On the internet, it would be very, very easy to find an example of an influencer who's going to say that, or someone who's going to say that, and instead of actually trying to put the effort in, that's going to then validate my worldview. I could say it would be impossible for me to get, let's say, 15% body fat, I don't know, for example, right? Because I am 6'1", for example. Just examples, right? And if I really wanted to, I could find an internet influencer to lead me to believe this. And I feel like where we see this the most in today's world for young men is on the front of jobs and on the front of dating. Because these are the two instances, the two markets where I see this the most. When I've spoken about dating, for example, even in my own videos, I've had people in the comment section saying, well, that's not true because women want this or this or this, failing to understand that this is not the reality of the world. Now, the thing about where this becomes increasingly dangerous or increasingly potent is when you've got the experience to back this up. So, for example, if you have no experience with dating, and let's say you're broke and you're short and you're this and you're that, it would be easy to believe that women don't like you because you're broke and you're short and you're this and you're that. If you had that experience initially, it would be harder to fall for that mindset view in the first place. But because a lot of these guys are young, because a lot of these guys are not very confident, they are going to fall for this and they're going to use that as the excuse. When in reality, you don't need to have a lot of money to have a girlfriend, let's say. You don't need to have a lot of money. You just need to be a normal person. This is just a reality of it. And if you're struggling with that, try and meet more people. So that's one core example. You know, people may like that, people may not, but it is true. And the money one is another one. Now, this is creating a world where a lot of guys are even more lost. We've just spoken briefly about how the dating one keeps a lot of guys lost, but I think the money one is arguably more pressing, because a lot of these guys are very hypocritical, or they've become very hypocritical without even knowing it, because of the way that the internet perpetuates this mindset. They say that girls are attracted to money. I don't think this is true at all, right? But even if this was the case, the same guys who will say this will carry on being broke and not try. And the reason for this is because, 9-to-5 jobs don't make sense, or having a job is being a wage slave. Now, to some degree, this is obviously true. When you work for an employee or an employer, you have to show up to work, you have to follow the company's protocols, and so on and so forth. This is all true. But by your own logic, wouldn't you still be better off getting a job than not? You see, what we've created here is a situation where so many guys are misguided, failing to understand what actually creates a strong character. People can build a false sense of security or a false sense of popularity through the internet. People can build a false sense of superiority because they don't work a 9-to-5 job, all whilst actually hampering their ambition in massive ways. It's no wonder why we're seeing so many young men being lost today, right? They're being told that having a 9-to-5 job is not good for them, it doesn't make sense, when in reality, that's going to be one of their best ways to get out there and meet people and take their place in the world. Not for everyone, but for a lot of these guys, it's going to be a very good start, right? Then worry about the business stuff later. So they're being misguided on that front. They're being told that what they are doing is wrong. They're being told that they should be a millionaire by such a young age. They're being told that this and this and this. In reality, this is never going to be the life for most people. And the best thing to do, even if you want to begin that life, if you're on block zero, if you're not feeling happy with where you are right now, is to start doing something. If you've got no money coming in, try and get some money coming in. Maybe that's a 9-to-5 job. Maybe that's a part-time gig. Maybe you build a business. But we now have a situation where so many guys, I think, are stuck still, because they don't know which path to follow, because the internet has made it so cloudy. I don't know, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope I'll see you again soon. It's just my opinions on this particular subject. Thank you. Goodbye.